What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Inside Inter Miami. I'm your host, Andre Fernandez, joined once again by Michelle Kaufman, our Inter Miami beat writer. And boy, what a week it's been because, what a season it's been. Inter Miami setting a league record for most points, but a team with Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba, and the list goes on, is on the brink of collapse. If they lose one more game, the series is tied at 1 with Atlanta now after a loss. So 2-1 loss to Atlanta last week in Atlanta. We'll review what happened. Atlanta has held the mythical Lionel Messi in check this entire series, which is interesting in itself. We'll get some updates on Sergio Busquets. How's he doing? Yannick Bright, how's he doing? And we'll look ahead to this monumental Game 3 on Saturday. Win or go home for this team at home to see if they can keep this going, or if this is a colossal failure after everything that's happened. And Michelle talked a little bit with Tata Martino, Coach Tata Martino, a little bit about these Neymar rumors as well, as he kind of gives his take on what's realistic and what's not. But let's start with the situation this team is in, Michelle. Hard to believe if they lose this match, it's all over. All the high expectations that this team has had. What went wrong on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine. I think everyone just assumed, everyone had already penciled them in their bracket that they're going to win this round. I mean, this is the opening round. They had home field advantage. They're the number 1 seed, the best record in the history of MLS, 74 points. No team has ever been that successful in the regular season. So they came in flying high. Like you mentioned, they have the Beatles, the Mount Rushmore. We keep talking about Messi, Busquets, Alba, Suarez on your roster.
Yep.
4 guys that you would never imagine would play in MLS, period. They're all playing in the same team on this team. They rolled through the regular season, injuries, not, just departures for national team. They stayed on top the whole season. And the XN won the Supporter Shield, celebrated Supporter Shield. And the expectation is that this team is going to win the whole thing, or at the very least was going to get to the final. People would have maybe understood if they lost to Columbus Crew, which, by the way, that turned out not to be a good prediction either. So all of a sudden now they're with their backs against the wall against Atlanta United, a team that struggled, that was up and down this year, a team that was the number 9 seed. They were literally the last team that made the play-in game against the number 8 team. They go into the play-in game as the number 9 seed. No one's expecting anything. They beat Montreal in an incredible penalty kick kickoff. So they squeak into the playoffs, and their reward was they're going to get to play the almighty Inter Miami with the GOAT and all of the GOAT's herd of friends. And what happens? They're tied 1-1. Miami won the first game, but it was only by 1 goal. Messi did not score in that game, and they won, but it was close. Then they go to Atlanta. I was there the other day, 68,000 people. It was the 5th largest crowd for an MLS playoff game in history, the 5th largest playoff crowd, 68,000 people. And there was a smattering of Messi fans there, but the majority of the people there were Atlanta United fans, and they made themselves heard. It was loud. It was big. The field is big and wide. The stadium is huge. Everybody was very excited. Miami goes ahead on a strange goal, a goal where Brad Guzan, who has been a tremendous goalie, and during this series, we saw what he did in the first game with 8 saves. In this game, he falls down. He was trying to get the ball, falls down. Fede Redondo had he was quick enough to think on his feet, like, oh my God, the goalkeeper's down. The goal net is open. So he passed it to David Martinez, who had a beautiful finish into an empty net. And Miami goes up ahead 1-0. So at that point, you're thinking, okay, they got a goal from David Martinez. That's even unexpected. But surely Messi's going to score, or Suarez is going to score, Alba, one of these other guys. No. What happens in the second half, Atlanta ends up scoring on a defensive miscue from Miami. And then it's tied. It's tied 1-1 very, very late. In the 85th minute, Tata Martino, and I think everyone else is thinking that this is going to go to PKs. This is likely going to go to PKs. So he brings in Campana. Kramaski came in, offensive players who are good penalty kick shooters. And what happened is not that. It never got to penalty kicks because they scored in the 4th minute of extra time. In the 4th minute of extra time, they end up scoring the winning goal, and the game is over, and there's no PKs. The place goes insane. They start chanting ATL, ATL, and they were waving these little 404 flags that they got with their area code on it. And, you know, the place was bedlam. It was crazy. They were shooting off sirens and smoke. Their team was celebrating like they just won MLS Cup. And, you know, they were in a do or die situation, and they won. They won, and they kept the series alive. And if you look at them, Inter Miami against Atlanta, and I spoke to Fede Redondo this morning and David Martinez. They were the 2 players that they brought us for the media this morning. And I said to them, on paper, your team is far superior to the Atlanta team. Look at all the players that you have, the payroll that you have. You broke the MLS record for best record of most points. Why are you struggling so much with Atlanta? They've played Atlanta 4 times now this season, 4. They've won once.
Just one win.
They have 1 win in 4 games. They lost to them 3-1 here back in the spring. Then they tied them 2-2 in Atlanta regular season. Then they beat them here once by 1 goal in the first game of the playoffs, and now they lost by 1 goal. So this Atlanta team is giving them trouble. They've been playing organized, playing very good defense. Both Martinez and Fede Redondo said that they have really been playing very, very good, very disciplined defense. They said Brad Guzan obviously is a world-class keeper, but their whole team has been playing very good collective defense. And Lionel Messi, the best of all time, has not scored against Atlanta in these 2 games.
Which is wild.
Goal.
Yeah, which is wild to think that this team, which has had success against so many teams this year, looked so extremely dominant, especially down the stretch. They were just it's their first loss since July in an MLS competition. It's just I mean, I know they're a little shorthanded. I mean, we know Busquets is he's been sick. You know, they lose Yannick Bright, to a hamstring injury. I mean,
and those were huge. By the way, those are
yeah. Especially on the back end.
Before I go into how they're doing and what their availability is for this week, having Boosie out it's a big loss. I mean, we know this guy's a world-class player, and sometimes, he does things quietly, but he is he's the sort of a maestro in the back part of the field where he's directing everybody around. He makes very smart decisions. He directs other players around him to make smart decisions, and they rely on him. He's almost like an assistant coach on the field. I've talked about it before. The players all say that they look for his guidance. They look for his direction on the field. So with him out, I mean, Noah Allen did a very good job. He actually had an amazing save. He had an amazing clearance where he raced back to me, it looked like it was going to be a goal for Atlanta pretty early in the game. And Noah Allen ran his butt off and got back there in time to make the clearance. And that was a great, great play by Noah Allen. But, he doesn't have the experience that someone like Sergio Busquets has. And then when they lost Yannick Bright, seems like we're talking about Yannick Bright in every episode here. But I said in the last episode that he's the greatest bargain probably in MLS. He makes $71,000 and he's starting for this team. And he's like displaced Boosie to a different position because Tata likes him so much that he wants him on the field. This guy is like, he's a rock. He's so good. And they've really come to rely on him. He's a very good defensive midfielder. He's just everywhere. He's got a lot of energy, and he's able to, break things up. He's able to disrupt the other team's offense, and in addition, get the ball moving forward for Inter Miami. When he left the game, they put in Benja Kramaski, but he's a good offensive player and all that. But Yannick Bright brings something a little bit different. And with Boosie out, if Boosie had been playing, I think it would have been different. But with both of those guys out in the central midfield defensive area of the field, there were some holes there. There were some gaps, and Atlanta took advantage. Atlanta took advantage of those gaps.
Yeah, and it's at a point now where we're looking at this team and we're wondering, I mean, if they can get healthy with those two, I mean, maybe it'll help. I mean, like you said, with Boosie, you don't have the conductor of the orchestra. Everybody looks at Messi, but he really is the guy who's kind of like the glue back there. What's the latest on him? I mean, what'd you find out today?
He did not show up. He was not at training today. I expected that. I had heard that he was feeling better from a couple of sources. I had heard that he had improved and was feeling better in the last few days. He was not at training this morning, at least not the part that the media was allowed to see. They only let us watch 15 minutes, but he was not with the group. I didn't see him anywhere in the parts where I was allowed to look. I did not see Boosie at all. And today it's Wednesday and the game is Saturday. He didn't train at all last week. And what happened to him is it's a little unusual. Tata explained it that he got a contusion in the first game of the series. He got some sort of a contusion in his, in his torso, and it either led to or somehow he developed a pneumonia type of respiratory issue after getting that hit. So he was dealing with, with a contusion, but also with some sort of respiratory issue. So he was not at training today, and nor was Yannick Bright. Yannick Bright left the game with a hamstring injury. It is not expected to be a very serious hamstring injury, but as we know, anyone who follows sports or anyone who's played sports, hamstrings are tricky, and especially in a sport like soccer where there's a lot of running, a lot of sprinting, changing of directions. The hamstring has to heal, and the hamstring takes a while sometimes to heal. So even if it's a mild hamstring strain or a medium strain, I don't know that he's going to be available for Saturday. And Tata sort of suggested after the game that they're hoping to get Boosie back. They may not be able to have Yannick Bright. Well, if they don't have Yannick Bright, and if Boosie can't play either, they're in the same situation that they were the other day. Now, they will be home. This game is going to be, at Chase Stadium at home. But their backs are against the wall. I mean, this is it. It's win or go home. And now we have seen that Atlanta beat them here 3-1 earlier in the year. Atlanta lost to them by just one goal in the previous game. And that's with Leo Messi on the field. This is not the ragtag group, whatever. This is the real Inter Miami with all the stars. They've been struggling with Atlanta. So I don't think anything is a given. The players today were saying that they're not even thinking, because they were asked, if you lose, like, is this season a failure, whatever, they're not even talking about, they won't even talk about it. They won't even address that. They said they're not even thinking about losing. They're thinking only about winning and advancing. Their mentality is that they're going to win this game on Saturday and they're going to advance to the conference semifinal. And they're not even letting those thoughts enter their brain. Of course, we in the media stick those thoughts in their brain, but they're trying to block those thoughts out of their brain. But even if they're trying to block it, we know it's true. The reality is Miami, it doesn't matter that they were the number one seed and that their record in the 74 points and that they held up the supporter shield and took photos with it. None of that matters. They are tied 1-1 with Atlanta. The number 9 seed is tied with the number 1 seed. And this is a do or die game, win or go home for Miami or for Atlanta this Saturday at Chase Stadium at 8:00. A lot of pressure. And all of the pressure is on Miami.
Absolutely.
Atlanta, they're playing with house money here. No one even expected them to be in the playoffs, first of all. Then everyone thought they would lose the wild card game because it was in Montreal. They go to Montreal and shock them up there. And now they're tied 1-1 with Inter Miami. So for them, they're playing with house money. There's nothing for them to lose. Miami has everything to lose. Everything to lose.
We in the media down here, we know that the magic that sometimes an 8th seed or a 9th seed can get. I mean, a couple of years ago, we saw it with the Panthers. We saw it with the Heat. They rode that all the way to the finals. Atlanta's looking to do the same thing. So, yeah, tons of pressure on this team for so many reasons. Let's see what Drake Callender, you spoke to him. Let's see what Drake Callender had to say about handling said pressure going into Game 3.
Yeah, I mean, in this league, really, any team can be any team. Yeah, like your record throughout the year can tell you about what kind of team you're on and whether you win a lot of games or not. But once it gets to the playoffs, everything resets, and it's opportunities for teams whether you get in as an 8 or 9 seed or you're the number 1 seed. It's kind of up for grabs. So yeah, it's not really thinking, oh, we're the 1 seed, we're supposed to win all the games. It's, hey, like, everybody's competing. They were fighting for their life tonight because it could have been their end of their playoff run, and they got out with a good result. So we're just going to focus on this week preparing, and now that we played 2 games against them, we kind of know what to expect, and just really lean into our advantage and what we're good at.
Can I ask one more? Was there a moment where or a time in the game where you felt that you guys sort of lost control? It seemed like you guys had the momentum. Was there a moment that you think was pivotal and changed anything?
I mean, anytime like you concede a goal, there's definitely an energy shift.
Mm-hmm.
I think being up 1-0 is great, but especially here in Atlanta when they score a goal, there's a train horn, there's the fire, and it's 60,000 people. So it might have felt like, oh, okay, they scored, but you'll get that with any away team that you play. So it's really just about if we can see the goal resetting, and then just having a strategy just to keep building our own momentum. Anytime you score a goal, whether home or away, there's going to be a momentum shift, and it's about doing what we need to do on the field to ensure that we keep that momentum.
Oh, there you have it.
Yeah. Going forward with this last game, I think Miami needs to establish right away. They need to take control of this game at home.
Mm-hmm.
And, Lionel Messi, we know what he's done. We saw he was coming off back-to-back hat tricks going into this series. I mean, I didn't even mention that earlier when we talked about what big, underdogs Atlanta was. They were going up against not only Lionel Messi, but a Lionel Messi who had just scored hat trick for country and club. The guy was on top of his game, playing amazing, scoring like nobody's business. And all of a sudden he runs into Atlanta. Brad Guzan makes 8 saves in the first game, including a couple on Messi that I don't know that any other, not too many keepers would have made a couple of those saves. And then in this last game, they held him to no goals either. So between he and Suarez, the pistolero and we haven't been doing those little celebrations.
No,
did not go on in the last game. These guys, they have the talent and they have the experience to beat Atlanta. There's no question. When you look at them on paper, they should beat Atlanta. And maybe in a 1-game series, they did. They beat them once. But when you have to beat a team 2 out of 3, it's a little more difficult. This is what happens with the American playoff system. You have to win in these series, and it's difficult. And they need to establish right away. And then their defense, they need, especially if Boussy's missing or if Yannick Bright is missing, or if they're both missing, everybody needs to step up defensively. And the thing is, when you have Suarez and Messi both playing up top, you're a little vulnerable defensively. Those 2 guys are not going to be at 37 years old racing back to play great defense. That's not what they do. They're there to score.
It's almost like
they need to score, but the other guys collectively need to pick up the slack and play really tough defense in order to have a chance to win on Saturday.
It's almost like your best defense is a good offense here, because they really need to jump in front. They need to get these goals early, maybe establish, a 1-2 goal lead and help, because especially if Boussy and Bright are out in this one again, they're going to be extremely vulnerable on the back end like they've been. This team has all this firepower. They need to finally show it. I get it. Guzan is playing out of his mind, but you know what? This is world-class talent up front, 37 years old or not, that has done it before.
Be able to beat the
and it can rise. It can rise to the top in the most clutch. He's done it before. They, not just Messi, have done it before in clutch moments like this internationally. The pressure's not going to get to them. Trust me in that sense.
Yeah, that is one thing Tata said in his post game. He said that even though they are in this tough situation, he said, I do feel optimistic because the players we have on our team, a lot of these guys we have on our team, they have been in much more difficult situations. than
Oh
what
my
we're
God.
facing.
World
And they've come
championships,
through.
cups.
Yeah, they've been in World Cups. They've been in Champions League games. They've been in all kinds of huge games, a lot of these guys. So he said, I have faith that these players that we have been in these situations before and will know how to handle it. And they're not going to freak out from the pressure. But they're human. They are human. And there is pressure on them. And they know if they get eliminated in the opening round of these playoffs to a number 9 seed that a lot of people didn't even think would be in the playoffs.
I know.
To me, that's a failure. To me, that's a huge failure for this team. Winning the Supporter Shield is nice. It means you were the best team across the whole season. And that is true. And that is something to celebrate. There's no question. In most leagues in the world, like we've said, if you're the best team throughout the whole season, you are the champion and you raise the cup. And, they were the best team all season. But now it's a mini season. It's the postseason. And with everybody there, with Messi healthy, there's no excuses. Messi's not healthy, this, that, and the other. No excuses. They have everybody. Messi's healthy. He just scored back-to-back hat tricks. He scored back-to-back hat. How can he not score against Atlanta if he scored back-to-back hat tricks?
It is not just a failure. It would be, in my opinion, it would be a colossal failure because, I mean, it's not just the fact, like you said, yes, of course, winning setting the top record ever, the Supporter Shield, all that. But let's take it beyond that. Look at the investment of what's been put into this team.
$42 million.
By Inter Miami.
Double of most, most out payrolls of the entire league. $42 million payroll.
But not just Inter Miami. MLS as a whole, to make this phenomenon happen and have Messi here with all the investments, Apple, you name it. Think about what Apple and everyone else is going to regret if this team is out.
Executives thinking?
And look at all they're going to lose. Everybody. Right, all they're going to lose for the next few rounds if he's not around all the way until as long as it possibly can go until the MLS Cup, let's say, or at least even close to that. If it's out like one and done, just that is a huge letdown all the way around, on and off the field, monetarily, you name it.
And what about FIFA? I haven't even mentioned FIFA. What about giving them the spot in the Club World Cup, which is controversial? It is controversial. A lot of people felt that the MLS Cup champion is the one who should have gone. Now, it turns out Columbus Crew got eliminated by New York Red Bulls. So it's not going to be the big debate about, Columbus Crew should have gotten in because they are the defending 2-time champion. No, they're not going to be the defending 2-time champion. They are out in the first round, which was also a massive upset. Yeah. No one expected that. I mean, everyone expected that the Eastern Conference final was going to be on November 30th, Inter Miami against Columbus Crew. People had pretty much penciled that into their brackets. Crew.
Think about that too. The dropped ball of not having. On top of that, you get eliminated, and you wouldn't have even had to face them down the road.
Right. You're going to get to advance in the playoffs without the Columbus Crew waiting for you. So, I mean, they're in a great position. They've got the Columbus Crew out of the way now. If they win this Saturday, they have a good path. A good path. Of course, we see that nothing is guaranteed, and it's one and done. After this round, every game is an elimination game. So after this round,
I know it's crazy. Just my opinion, but it's so weird that to have this in this round and not have the 2 out of 3 be the MLS Cup. I don't know. It just feels it's strange to me.
Yeah,
but.
It is strange. So what happens now? If they do advance, then there's a big break. There's a 2-week break during a FIFA break, which, by the way, Messi was called up to the Argentine national team, so he'll be gone, and then comes back, and then hopefully doesn't get injured. And have you heard this story before? Do we need to replay the same episode from 3 times this year, 4 times this year? Anyway, but yeah, so even if they win this Saturday, the next game is either November 23rd or 24th. That's the conference semifinal against Orlando or Charlotte.
Yep.
Which are,
and they're tied 1-1 too.
They're tied 1-1. Charlotte, Orlando. That's a single elimination game.
Yep.
Win or go home, November 23rd or 24th. Then after that is the conference final, and then is the MLS Cup final, which is December 7th.
Which, by the way, we're forgetting. Cincinnati is no slouch either. They're still around too. That's another team that's given Inter Miami trouble.
Cincinnati won the Supporter Shield last year. They were kind of in
Yeah.
the situation this team was in.
Right.
Cincinnati last year won the Supporters Shield and was considered to be a great team, and then they didn't end up winning the cup. They won the Supporters Shield. Columbus Crew won the cup. It was divided. Yeah. So
But
the
definitely
precedent here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the teams that win the Supporters Shield have not,
Don't
for
always
the
do
most
it,
part, won. No, for the most part, they have not. For the most part, the Supporters Shield winner has not won the double and won the MLS Cup. It's a hard thing to do.
But
But this team is still supposed to be
but-
different. This is not your
Right.
run-of-the-mill MLS team.
I was gonna say,
This is a $42 million
right.
Lionel Messi, Suarez,
You
Busquets,
don't-
Alba, and all their friends.
You don't bring in the entire Justice League and expect to lose when you bring in Superman and everybody else. And that other Supporter Shield winners have not had this.
No.
Nor the huge investment. I'll say again,
the hype, the investment,
the monetary
investment,
investment,
the everything,
yeah,
all of the commercials, all of the promotion was for Inter Miami and Lionel Messi. And
he's
all
everywhere.
That.
He's the poster boy, and you're
he's
gonna
the
have
poster
him
boy of the league.
out.
And if you lose him in the first round, the rest of the playoffs, and again, no offense to Atlanta, to Orlando, to Charlotte, to Cincinnati, or to the Red Bulls. But when you lose the glamour team, this glamour team from the playoffs, you lose the playoffs loses some shine. I don't care what anybody says. The playoffs do not have the same excitement and zing and interest outside of this country, inside this country, and out of this country. If this team loses, the interest level goes down.
Yeah.
So there's a lot on the line for this team. There's a lot of pressure.
Putting a tiny pin on the here and now. Let's go to the last topic we want to cover on this show, and that's Neymar. And speaking of future potential future shine for this team, Neymar. What did Tata Martino have to say about it? Let's see.
¿Cómo fue su etapa dirigiendo a Neymar en el Barcelona? ¿Cómo lo puede?
Neymar.
Sí.
¿Y por qué Neymar?
Porque no sabe por casa, porque compró casaca. Y bueno, pero si todo lo que compran casa acá van a venir a jugar acá al Inter, todos estamos complicados. Entonces, que cierren la inmobiliaria. No, bien, yo coincidí con llegué a Barcelona en el mismo momento que Ney. No, fue un buen año y para mí poder dirigir a jugadores de tanta jerarquía siempre tendrá un recuerdo muy especial, pero no más que eso.
¿Y pueden imaginar que los 5 estén aquí?
Y acá, ya habiendo venido Leo y el resto de los muchachos, todo lo que pueda pasar. Lo que no me imagino es si la liga no flexibiliza el tema salarial, es cómo se llevaría adelante, porque después escribirlo, decirlo en un medio está todo bien, no pasa nada, no trae ninguna consecuencia, pero la puesta en marcha, ¿cómo sería? Nadie le explica. Y si la realidad que si hay algo que tiene la MLS es que las reglas son estrictas y no se pueden romper a menos que la MLS decida cambiar.
Yeah, so for those who don't speak Spanish out there, Tata was asked, very coyly, a reporter asked him and said, "Oh, what was it like when you were coaching Neymar in Barcelona?" Just out of the blue, that question came, right? And so Tata's like, Neymar, why would you be asking me about Neymar? And then there was a chuckle from everyone and said, well, because he bought a house here. He just bought a $26 million house here. And then Tata said, well, if everybody who bought a house in South Florida was going to play for Inter Miami, that would get very complicated. And we'd have to shut down the real estate market here.
I had a funny line, too, about if someone got a girlfriend in Fort Lauderdale. What was that line?
Yeah, no, that's coming next. That's coming next. But he said,
next.
Yeah, that's coming on our next little clip here.
One.
But he said, just because he bought a house here doesn't mean that he's coming here. And then I said, but can you imagine the 5 of them here together? And he said, well, now that Leo is here and the other guys came, he said, obviously anything is possible. He said, what I can't imagine is how this would be possible with the strict MLS rules for salary, because the salary structure is very strict. He said, one thing is for you guys in the media to talk about it. There's no consequence. If you guys talk about it and if fans talk about it, there's no consequence. But he said, we have rules, very strict MLS rules that we have to follow, and we can't break those rules. So then he said, so I don't see, that that's possible. Then he got asked by another reporter right away, what do you think about Angel Di Maria? The Argentine star. Would you prefer, because that's another player whose name has been linked here. Would you prefer to have Angel Di Maria or would you prefer to have Neymar? And here's what he said.
La verdad que no se puede hablar tan fácilmente y gratuitamente de futbolistas que podrían venir o no. Es decir, me parece que cuando hablamos de esto se necesita otro tipo de sustento. No podemos hablar y mencionar a un jugador solamente porque compró casa o se puso de novio con una chica de Fort Lauderdale. Sería un disparate. Hay que hablar con cosas contundentes. Primero hay que analizar qué es lo que ofrece la liga y si realmente esto es posible. Partiendo desde esa base, hoy esto es imposible. Así que no hay más continuidad en la conversación.
I mixed up my superstars dating women in Fort Lauderdale.
Dating women
it was
from Fort
It was Di
Lauderdale.
Maria. Yeah.
Dating people from Fort. So he said, look, he was asked about Di Maria and he said, it doesn't, we can't just keep throwing these names around just to throw names around. He said, just because someone bought a house in Miami or someone is dating has a girlfriend in Fort Lauderdale, and I love how he says Fort Lauderdale, Fort Lauderdale. Just because someone, has a house in Miami or a girlfriend in Fort Lauderdale doesn't mean that that automatically they're going to be joining this team. He said, the way I see it right now, financially, basically, he's saying it would be impossible the way it is right now. And it's not worth having further conversation unless something changes. So, the question is, will Miami front office be able to do some creative financing in order to bring him in? Now, we know that people said there's no way they would bring these four that they have. There's like, how are they going to bring Luis Suarez if they already have Messi, Alba, and Busquets? There's no way they're also getting Suarez. And now the feeling is there's no way they're going to have Neymar, also 5 guys from that same Barcelona team. How in the world could they do that financially under the strict cap rules of MLS? But
they could just have the 5 of them on the team playing the other 11. Hey, that's all they need.
That's right. Maybe just cut the rest of the team. That may work actually. But no, all kidding aside, these guys are willing to take pay cuts. And, I mentioned that in one of my stories that Busquets, Alba, Suarez, Alba and Suarez are making 1.5 million this year. I know that's a lot of money for us, but that's a lot less than they could be making in other places.
Right.
These guys at the stage of career that they're at in their 30s, they all want to play together. They want to have their little reunion. It's like a band, reunion tour. They are like a rock band having a reunion tour. And Neymar was in the band. Neymar's, the drummer. Neymar's the bass player, whatever. They're missing one. They're missing a guy from that group of 5. And if he's willing, now he's making so much money in the Middle East, he's making so much money in Saudi Arabia. But if he's willing to come here for less money because he wants to play in Miami, a place that he's building a $26 million, he spent $26 million on the lot. Now he's going to build the house.
Right.
So he spent $26 million on a lot, on a waterfront lot. He obviously loves Miami, is planning to plant his roots here. So he may be willing to play for a fraction of what he's making in other parts of the world just for the opportunity to reignite his career in the United States, at the time that the Club World Cup is about to happen and 1 year away from the World Cup in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. He may want to position himself like Messi has as a huge star in the United States, for marketing his brand. Maybe he feels he's not marketing his brand as much where he is. And if he came here and had all these American companies throwing sponsorships at him right before the Club World Cup and right before the World Cup next year, maybe it's prudent for him to do that. So when we talk about how would this all work with the MLS salary cap, I think there's much more. There's much more at work here than just salaries. These guys have a lifestyle that they love in Miami. Neymar loves Miami. He is friends with Jimmy Butler. He likes to go out to the nightclubs. I mean, he loves Miami.
Yep.
And if he wants to live in Miami and play with his buddies and be able to sit courtside at the Heat games and be able to sit courtside at the Miami Open Tennis, which is what he does when he's in town, and throw the first pitch at the Marlins game, he may be willing to take a massive pay cut to come here. They may be able to pull this off.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised if they pull this off.
Yeah, if they do it and it's, again, financially beneficial to them and brand beneficial, image, everything, all of that. If all those factors can come into play, and like Tata said, they don't break the bank. I think that's what he said, something like that. Why not? I mean, this is going to be, I mean, it just has to fit within MLS's salary cap, the salary constraints, all of that. I mean, can it be all five at the same time? Hey, we didn't think it was going to happen with Messi.
I never thought Messi would be here, let alone the other three.
It just
or
seemed
four.
surreal.
I never thought Messi would come. It seemed like
yeah.
a pipe dream. It seemed ridiculous.
Absolutely.
It seemed like just a fantasy. It seemed a fantasy that Lionel Messi is going to come play in a temporary stadium on Commercial Boulevard in the middle of an industrial park where there's auto body shops.
There were still weeks
and gas stations and a Dunkin' Donuts across the street. The dining option across from that stadium is Dunkin' Donuts and a McDonald's.
I have filed stories from that Dunkin' Donuts before, Michelle.
The Dunkin' Donuts, and next to it a McDonald's, and then across the street auto body shops. And that's where Lionel Messi, the greatest player of all time, is playing there. What? There's no way that I thought that was going to happen.
There were weeks. There was
happened.
like pinch me moments for weeks. Like, is this real? Like, they actually did get him, right? I didn't just wake up and that was just a
and I'll end by saying
it happened, right?
Yeah, it happened, and I do believe that the Musk brothers, they have demonstrated, and David Beckham, this ownership group, they want this to continue after Messi and Suarez are gone, and they're 37. Neymar's 32. He's 5 years younger. If he can come over here and become the face of the franchise going forward, it makes sense for them to find a way to make it work.
Oh, yeah, absolutely makes sense. I mean, it's the way to sustain this franchise at the level that it's at, or close to the level that it's at, for years to come, instead of just having it just fall off a cliff in 2 years, like we've talked about once Messi goes. So it's almost a must. Like, they got to figure out a way to do it somehow. Whether it's
First, they have to
survive on Saturday.
Otherwise, they're going to fall off a cliff. They're going to fall off a cliff, and the interest in the MLS playoffs will take a dive. It will take a dive if Messi and these other guys are out. It doesn't mean the other teams aren't worthy. They certainly are, and they're going to have the regular viewership that MLS playoffs would have. But if they want the big bump, that this team brings, these guys have to win on Saturday. A lot on the line.
It's a great story for Atlanta, but the league is going to be like, congrats, guys.
Congratulations, Atlanta.
Thanks.
Yeah. And in the Apple office, in the Apple headquarters, they're going to be like, oh, Atlanta, okay.
Yeah.
All right, Atlanta, Orlando, Atlanta, Charlotte. What about Atlanta, Charlotte, Atlanta, Orlando, or Atlanta or Lionel Messi versus Orlando? Mickey Mouse versus Lionel Messi. I mean, that's a series that people would be interested in.
Right.
Yep.
We will be back next week on Inside Inter Miami, and we will either have a surviving team that advanced, or we will have a colossal failure to dissect. But we will
have
be
the
here.
Post-mortem. We will have the post-mortem.
The epitaph on what could have been, maybe. But let's see. We'll see what happens. But we'll have it covered for you. Michelle will be there on Saturday night in person, as always. And check out all her work at MiamiHerald.com. Check out this show at MiamiHerald.com or on YouTube, whichever you prefer. And if you can only listen to us, like we've said before, all your favorite podcatchers, Spotify, iTunes, all of them have it. So until then, for Michelle Kaufman, I'm Andre Fernandez. Thanks for watching Inside Inter Miami. We'll see you next week.